I stood at the Thanksgiving table with a serving spoon in my hand, frozen. The smell of roasted turkey filled the dining room, but all I could focus on was my mother's voice cutting through the warm air like ice. "You're no longer part of this family, Lily. My name is Lily Harding." Her tone wasn't angry. It was calm, measured, like she'd rehearsed the words. My stepfather Kenneth cleared his throat and looked down at his plate. My half-sister Danielle took a slow sip of wine, her lips curling into the smallest smile. The crystal glasses clinked softly as someone shifted in their seat. I opened my mouth to respond, but Mom had already turned away. She reached for the gravy boat and passed it to Kenneth's brother as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just erased 28 years of my existence with one sentence. The conversation resumed around me. Awkward at first, then gradually louder. Someone laughed. Someone else asked for the cranberry sauce. I stood there, invisible, holding that stupid serving spoon like it could anchor me to reality. That's when I understood. This wasn't a spontaneous outburst. She had planned this moment, chosen this day, this audience. She wanted witnesses to my removal from the family story. I set down the spoon and walked toward the door. I didn't let myself cry until I reached my car in the driveway. Through the window behind me, I could hear laughter floating out into the cold November air. My mother's voice rose above the others, light and cheerful, as if the last 10 minutes hadn't happened. My hands shook as I fumbled with my keys. The engine started with a quiet rumble, and I sat there for a moment, staring at the house where I'd grown up. The house that used to be mine before it became theirs. I'd left my coat hanging on the back of my chair. Part of me wanted to go back for it, but another part understood what it meant to leave something behind. A reminder that I'd been there, even if they wanted to forget. My phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out, half expecting an apology that I knew wouldn't come. Instead, it was a text from Danielle. "Guess Mom finally said what we were all thinking." I stared at those words until they blurred. Then I put the phone face down on the passenger seat, shifted into reverse, and drove away from the only family I'd ever known. My name is Lily Harding, and I used to belong somewhere. I grew up in that house on Maple Street, back when it was just Dad, Mom, and me. We weren't wealthy, but we were happy. Dad worked as an accountant, Mom taught piano lessons in our living room, and I spent my afternoons reading in the backyard under the old oak tree. Then Dad got sick. Cancer, fast and merciless. He died 3 months after his diagnosis, and something in Mom died with him. She stopped teaching piano. She stopped smiling at me the way she used to. She stopped seeing me at all. Within a year, she'd met Kenneth at a grief support group. Within 2 years, they were married. Kenneth came with Danielle, his daughter from his first marriage. Danielle was 2 years younger than me. Blonde where I was dark-haired, confident where I was quiet. The first time I heard Mom call Danielle my rock, something cracked inside my chest. I was standing in the kitchen doorway, invisible as always, while Mom hugged Danielle and thanked her for helping plan Kenneth's surprise birthday party. I'd planned Dad's birthday parties every year. Mom never called me her rock. Back in my small apartment across town, I pulled out the old photo album I'd rescued during my last visit home. I hadn't looked at it in months, maybe longer. The leather cover was worn smooth from years of handling. I opened it carefully. Half the pages were empty, torn edges showing where photos used to be. My childhood systematically removed. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family vacations, all gone. In their place were newer photos of Mom, Kenneth, and Danielle. A replacement family, complete and whole without me. But one page near the back caught my attention. A faded photograph of a large brick house surrounded by trees. Grandpa Harding's estate, the place where we'd spent every summer when I was young. Below it, in Mom's handwriting from years ago, were the words, "Our family legacy." I stared at that photo for a long time. Grandpa Harding had been Dad's father, stern but fair, a man who believed in family loyalty above everything. He died when I was 19, leaving behind that beautiful estate and memories that felt like they belonged to someone else's life. I remembered something then. Something important. 3 weeks passed before the envelope arrived. Plain white, no return address, official looking. I opened it standing in my apartment kitchen, still wearing my work scrubs from my shift at the medical clinic. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Harding Estate Trust Notification. Annual Beneficiary Statement enclosed. My hand started shaking as I read my name printed clearly in black ink. Lily Ann Harding, listed as one of 3 beneficiaries of the Harding Estate Trust. The other 2 names were my mother's and someone listed as secondary heir per Clause 7b. I had to read it twice to believe it. When Grandpa died, I'd assumed everything went to Mom as Dad's widow. I never asked about the estate, never thought about inheritance. I was too young, too grief-stricken, too focused on just surviving Mom's transformation into someone I didn't recognize. But here was my name, official and undeniable. They'd forgotten about me. Or maybe they never knew I was still listed. Either way, this piece of paper changed everything. I pulled out my laptop and started searching for information about the Harding estate. What I found made my pulse spike. Danielle's social media posts lit up my screen like accusations. Photos from 6 months ago showed her and Mom standing in front of Grandpa's estate, champagne glasses raised, wearing matching smiles that made my stomach turn. "Excited to announce our new family venture," the caption read. "Turning the historic Harding estate into a luxury bed and breakfast. Opening spring 2024. Can't wait to share this beautiful space with travelers from around the world." The comment section was full of congratulations and heart emojis. Friends and distant relatives praised their entrepreneurial spirit. Someone wrote, "Your grandfather would be so proud." I scrolled through more posts. Construction updates, interior design choices, photos of Mom and Danielle meeting with contractors and designers. Every image showed them beaming with pride, celebrating what they called our family's legacy. Not once did my name appear. Not in the captions, not in the comments, nowhere. I'd been edited out of the story completely. I looked back at the trust notification on my kitchen counter. Grandpa had sworn that estate would stay in the family. He'd made us promise, all of us, the summer before he died. They were about to turn his home into a business. And they'd forgotten one crucial detail. I spent the next week doing quiet research. I called the estate attorney's office, a man named Mr. Patterson who'd handled Grandpa's affairs. His secretary tried to brush me off at first, but when I mentioned my name and the trust notification, her tone changed immediately. "Let me put you through to Mr. Patterson directly." The lawyer's voice was careful when he answered. "Miss Harding, this is unexpected. How can I help you?" "I received the annual beneficiary statement," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I wanted to clarify a few things about my status in the trust." There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. "Your status is clear, Miss Harding. You're listed as a primary beneficiary with equal rights to the estate. Has someone told you otherwise?" "No," I said softly. "Nobody's told me anything at all." Another pause, longer this time. "I see. Well, according to the trust documents, any major decisions regarding the property require consent from all primary beneficiaries. That includes you." My heart hammered in my chest. "And if someone were to, say, start a business on the property without that consent?" "That would be problematic," Mr. Patterson said carefully. "Very problematic indeed." I thanked him and ended the call. Then I sat in my quiet apartment and smiled for the first time in weeks. I met Marcus Williams at a coffee shop downtown the following Saturday. He'd managed the estate's finances when Grandpa was alive, handled property taxes and maintenance costs and all the boring details that kept the place running. He'd also been one of Dad's closest friends. When I called and asked to meet, he agreed immediately. Now he sat across from me, older and grayer than I remembered, but with the same kind eyes. "Lily," he said warmly, "you look just like your father." We caught up for a few minutes, the polite conversation of people who'd lost touch. Then I pulled out printed copies of Danielle's social media posts and slid them across the table. His expression darkened as he looked through them. Your mother didn't mention you were involved in this project. I'm not, I said quietly. They haven't spoken to me in months. Not since Thanksgiving, when Mom told me I wasn't part of the family anymore. Marcus set down the papers and leaned back in his chair. Does your mother know you're still listed as a beneficiary? I don't think so. He was quiet for a moment, thinking. They're taking significant loans against the property's value. I saw the applications come through. The plan is ambitious, expensive. They're cutting corners to save money, taking risks that your grandfather never would have approved. What kind of risks? The kind that could destroy the estate's value if something goes wrong. I looked down at my coffee, processing this. Is there anything that can stop them? Marcus met my eyes. Only if someone with legal authority objects. Someone like a primary beneficiary who didn't consent to the project. Smiled. Then I suppose someone should object. That night, I dug through the box of documents I'd taken from Dad's old office before Mom cleared it out. Legal papers, financial statements, copies of Grandpa's will. I'd never read them carefully before. There'd never been a reason. Now I read every word with the attention of someone looking for salvation. And on page 7 of the trust agreement I found it. Clause 12. Property use and modifications. Any sale, lease, or commercial use of the property requires unanimous written consent of all living primary beneficiaries. In the absence of such consent, the trust shall revert to preservation status under the terms outlined in Section 4. I read it 3 times to make sure I understood. Then I took a photo of the page with my phone and sent it to Mr. Patterson with a simple message. We should talk. His response came within an hour. My office, Monday morning, 9 o'clock. I set my phone down and looked around my tiny apartment. The walls were bare except for a few framed photographs of Dad. My furniture was secondhand, my savings account nearly empty. I worked long shifts at the clinic just to make rent each month. Meanwhile, Mom and Danielle were building an empire on land that belonged to all of us. Using my family's legacy without my permission. Without even acknowledging I existed. Not anymore. I didn't confront them. That wasn't my style, and more importantly, it wasn't strategic. Instead, I became invisible, a ghost haunting the edges of their perfect new life. I watched from a distance as they posted updates, as they held investor meetings, as they gave interviews to local newspapers about their heartwarming mother-daughter business venture. I created a fake social media profile and followed all the estate's accounts. I read every comment, studied every photo, tracked every milestone. The grand opening was scheduled for April 15th, just 5 months away. They were already taking reservations. I learned the names of their contractors, their designers, their financial backers. I memorized the layout of their business plan from the details Danielle carelessly shared online. I knew their budget, their projected income, their dreams of expansion. And they had no idea I was watching. Then one Tuesday morning in January, my phone buzzed with a new email. The subject line read, Forward, Loan Agreement Revision. I opened it, confused, and felt my breath catch. It was from Mom's email address, forwarded to me by mistake. The message was meant for Danielle, discussing final changes to their construction loan. And attached was a document that made my blood run cold. The loan agreement listed 3 guarantors. My mother, Danielle, and me. My name was right there, typed in official banking documents, guaranteeing a $200,000 construction loan. My signature appeared at the bottom of page 5, a digital copy that looked exactly like the signature I used on official documents. Except I'd never signed this. I'd never even seen it before this moment. I saved everything immediately. The email, the attachment, the forwarding history that proved it came from Mom's account. Then I sat very still, processing what this meant. They'd forged my signature. Used my name without permission. Committed fraud to secure financing for their project. And they'd been careless enough to email me the evidence. My hands wanted to shake with anger, but I kept them steady. I'd learned something important from watching Mom over the years. Emotions were weakness. Strategy was strength. And right now I had something more valuable than anger. I had leverage. I didn't respond to the email. Didn't call, didn't confront, didn't give them any warning that I knew. Instead, I forwarded everything to Mr. Patterson with a simple note. We need to discuss this immediately. Then I waited. Mr. Patterson's office was exactly what I expected. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, shelves lined with law books that probably cost more than my car. He gestured for me to sit and studied me over his reading glasses. Miss Harding, he said slowly. These documents you sent me are concerning. Very concerning. I nodded, staying quiet, letting him talk. Your signature on this loan agreement was clearly placed there without your knowledge or consent. That's fraud. Serious crime. You could pursue criminal charges if you wanted to. I don't want to, I said quickly. Not yet. His eyebrows rose. Then what do you want? I leaned forward. I want to know exactly what my rights are regarding the estate. I want to understand what happens if I refuse to consent to their business venture. And I want to know how to protect myself and Grandpa's legacy without destroying what's left of my family. Mr. Patterson was quiet for a long moment. Then he opened a thick folder on his desk. Let's start with your rights, he said. And then we'll discuss your options. But Miss Harding, I should warn you. Once we start down this path, there's no easy way back. Your relationship with your mother and half-sister will likely be irreparable. I thought about Thanksgiving, about being erased, about years of invisibility and dismissal. That relationship is already gone, I said softly. Now I just want to do what's right. Then let's begin. The estate's launch party was scheduled for March 23rd. A soft opening for investors and local media before the official grand opening in April. I wasn't invited, naturally. But I went anyway. I wore a simple black dress and arrived just as the evening was getting started. The estate looked beautiful, restored to something close to what I remembered from childhood summers. White lights hung from the trees, soft music played from hidden speakers, and well-dressed people mingled on the front lawn with champagne glasses. I walked up the driveway like I belonged there. Because I did belong there, even if they'd forgotten. Mom saw me first. She was standing near the entrance with Kenneth, greeting guests, and her face went absolutely white when our eyes met. Her champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. You weren't supposed to be here, she whispered when I got close enough to hear. I know, I said calmly. But I'm a beneficiary of the estate trust. That gives me certain rights, including the right to attend events on the property. Kenneth shifted uncomfortably. Danielle appeared beside them, and when she saw me, her expression turned cold with fury. You're not family, she hissed, quiet enough that nearby guests couldn't hear. You have no right to be here. I lifted my own champagne glass, taken from a passing server's tray. You'll remember those words, I said softly. I promise you that. Then I walked past them into the house, into my grandfather's home, and let them wonder what I meant. Weeks passed. I went back to my normal life, working my shifts at the clinic, living in my small apartment, pretending everything was fine. Meanwhile, they grew bolder. More construction, more staff hired, more bookings confirmed. Local magazines featured them in articles about female entrepreneurs revitalizing historic properties. I watched it all from a distance and waited. Mr. Patterson filed the paperwork quietly. A notice of beneficiary consent required, submitted to the county clerk's office. It was a simple legal document stating that any commercial use of the Harding estate needed written approval from all primary beneficiaries, and that such approval had not yet been obtained. The notice was public record, but it took time to work its way through the system. Time for their plans to solidify, for their investments to deepen, for them to commit fully to a future that I could legally stop. I didn't tell anyone what I'd done. I just waited for the inevitable moment when someone at the bank or the county office would notice that small detail in the property records. That one requirement they'd overlooked. That I existed, and that I hadn't agreed to any of this. The call came on a Wednesday morning in early April. I was getting ready for work when my phone rang with an unknown number. I answered, expecting a telemarketer. Instead, I heard Mom's voice, shaking with barely controlled rage. What did you do? I stayed calm, keeping my voice level despite the adrenaline surging through me. I didn't do anything except protect my legal rights. The bank put a hold on our operating loan, Mom said, her words coming fast and sharp. They said there's a problem with the property title. Something about beneficiary consent. You did this. You sabotaged us. I followed the rules, I replied. Grandpa's rules. The ones in the trust agreement that require all beneficiaries to consent to commercial use of the property. You know what I meant. Her voice rose. You're doing this to punish me. To punish us. You're trying to ruin everything we've built. No, I said quietly. You ruined everything when you told me I wasn't part of this family anymore. I'm just making sure you remember that decisions have consequences. She was breathing hard on the other end of the line. We can fix this. Just sign the consent form and this all goes away. Why would I do that? Because we're family. The desperation in her voice was almost painful to hear. Because despite everything, we're still family. Closed my eyes. You told me I wasn't. Thanksgiving. In front of everyone. You erased me, Mom. Now you want me back because you need something from me. The silence stretched between us like years. I'll call you back, she finally said, and the line went dead. I sat down on my couch and let myself shake. The news hit the local papers within days. Ownership dispute threatens historic Harding Estate project. The article was careful with details, but the damage was immediate. Investors started asking questions. Bookings were postponed. The April 15th grand opening was quietly delayed. Danielle's social media presence shifted from triumphant updates to damage control. She posted tearful messages about family complications and unexpected legal challenges. The comments section filled with sympathy and confusion. Mom stopped posting entirely. She went dark on all platforms, retreating from the public image she'd carefully cultivated. Meanwhile, I kept working my shifts at the clinic, kept living my quiet life. People asked if I was okay if something was wrong, and I told them everything was fine. Because in a strange way, it was fine. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one being crushed under someone else's expectations. A week after the newspaper article, Mom showed up at my apartment. I saw her through the peephole, standing in my hallway looking smaller than I remembered. She wasn't wearing makeup, and her eyes were red from crying. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. We need to talk, she said. I'm listening. Can I come inside? Please. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She walked into my tiny living room and looked around at my modest furniture, my bare walls, my life that existed completely separate from hers. Let's fix this quietly, she said, turning to face me. We'll buy out your share of the estate. Name your price. We can make this go away and everyone can move forward. I crossed my arms. What share exactly? The one you said I didn't have anymore. Her face crumbled. That was a mistake. I was angry. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. You meant every word. They had the estate appraised by 3 different companies, searching for the lowest possible valuation. The first assessment came in at $800,000. The second at $750,000. The third, suspiciously, at just $600,000. They offered me $200,000, exactly 1/3 of the lowest appraisal, assuming there were 3 equal beneficiaries. It was more money than I'd ever had in my life, enough to change everything for me. I told Mr. Patterson about the offer during our next meeting. It's significantly undervalued, he said, reviewing the appraisal documents. The property is worth at least twice that amount, and your share should be calculated on current value plus the improvements they've made. You could negotiate for much more. I don't want to negotiate, I said. He looked at me curiously. Then what do you want to do? I thought about Grandpa, about his stern face and his strong beliefs about family loyalty. About Dad, who'd taught me that doing the right thing mattered more than doing the easy thing. I want to make sure the estate stays in the family, I said. The way Grandpa intended. Mr. Patterson nodded slowly. Then we have other options to discuss. 3 days later, while reviewing the loan documents they'd sent for my signature, Mr. Patterson found something that changed everything. One of the pages contained a digital signature that was supposed to be mine. But the date stamp on the signature was from before they'd supposedly sent me the buyout offer. They'd forged my consent to the operating loan, just like they'd forged my guarantee on the construction loan. "This is fraud," Mr. Patterson said quietly. "Multiple counts. You could pursue criminal charges now." I looked at the evidence spread across his desk. "What happens if I do?" "Your mother and half-sister could face serious legal consequences. Fines, possibly jail time. The estate would likely be seized to pay back the fraudulent loans. Everything they've built would be destroyed." I thought about that for a long moment. "And if I don't?" "Then you have leverage. Substantial leverage to ensure the estate is protected and properly managed going forward." "Let's hold on to this," I said. "For now." The next morning the story broke. A local investigative reporter had been digging into the estate's financing and found discrepancies in the public loan documents. His article, titled "Financial Irregularities Plague Harding Estate Venture," detailed suspicious signatures and questioned the validity of certain beneficiary consents. He didn't name me specifically, but he didn't have to. Everyone knew there were only 3 beneficiaries, and everyone could do the math. My phone exploded with messages. Distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years, old friends of Dad's, even some of Mom's friends expressing concern. I ignored most of them, but I read every single one. Danielle tried calling me 17 times that day. I let every call go to voicemail. On the 18th attempt, she left a message, her voice high and desperate. "Lily, please. We need to talk. Mom is falling apart. The investors pulled out. The bank is threatening to call in the loans. Everything is collapsing. Please just call me back. We can fix this together." Together. The word felt foreign coming from her mouth. I deleted the message and turned off my phone. That evening I drove out to the estate. It was empty now, no construction crews, no activity. I parked in the driveway and sat there, looking at the house in the fading light. This was where Dad had spent his summers as a child. Where I'd learned to ride a bike. Where Grandpa had told us stories on the front porch. Where memories lived that had nothing to do with business ventures or investment returns. My phone buzzed with one final message before I'd silenced it. From Mom. "Please. We need to talk. Face to face." I started my car and drove home. Mom showed up at my apartment the next morning at dawn. I heard her knocking before my alarm went off, persistent and desperate. When I opened the door in my pajamas, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "We need to make this right," she said immediately. "Tell me what you want. Tell me how to fix this." I stepped aside and let her in. She collapsed onto my couch like her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. "Danielle forged your signature," she said, the words tumbling out. "On the loan guarantees. She thought it would be easier than trying to find you and ask for permission. She didn't think you'd ever find out. She didn't think it mattered. Did you know?" Mom was quiet for a long moment. "Not at first. By the time I discovered what she'd done, we were already too deep into the project. I convinced myself it would be fine. That you'd never need to know. That we could just buy you out later if it ever became an issue." "You convinced yourself I didn't matter," I said softly. "No. I convinced myself I was protecting you. Keeping you out of the stress and responsibility of running a business. I thought I was doing you a favor." I sat down across from her. "By telling me I wasn't part of the family anymore?" She started crying then, really crying, in a way I hadn't seen since Dad's funeral. "I was angry. You reminded me too much of him. Every time I looked at you, I saw everything I'd lost. It was easier to push you away than to deal with the pain. That doesn't make it right." I know it doesn't. But please, Lily, we can fix this. We can undo the damage. Just tell me what you want." I looked at this woman who'd raised me, who'd taught me to read, who'd braided my hair before school every morning before Dad died. Somewhere inside her was the mother I used to know. But that mother had been gone for a long time. I want the estate protected, I said finally. The way Grandpa intended. Mr. Patterson laid out the options over the next week. The forged signatures gave us substantial leverage, but using it meant potentially destroying what was left of my family. Criminal charges would follow. Reputations would be ruined beyond repair. We could negotiate a settlement, he suggested. Force them to restructure the business with proper oversight. Ensure the estate is protected while allowing them to continue in a limited capacity. Or you exercise your rights as a primary beneficiary and block the commercial use entirely. Force them to abandon the bed and breakfast project. The estate would return to private family use as outlined in the trust. I thought about Grandpa's wishes, about Dad's memories, about what family was supposed to mean. There's a third option, I said slowly. What if I transferred my share? Mr. Patterson raised an eyebrow. To whom? The County Historical Society. Grandpa always said this place was important to local history. What if we preserved it properly, opened it to the public as a historic site instead of a business? That would effectively end your mother's project, he warned. The trust requires unanimous consent. If you transfer your share to a non-profit organization, they would almost certainly vote against commercial use. I know. Your mother won't forgive you for this. She stopped being my mother at that Thanksgiving table, I said quietly. I'm just finishing what she started. The paperwork took 2 weeks to finalize. The County Historical Society was thrilled to accept the donation. They promised to preserve the estate, to maintain it as a piece of local history, to tell its story the right way. I signed the transfer documents on a Tuesday morning in April, exactly 5 months after Mom had told me I wasn't family anymore. Mom found out during an investors' meeting. She was trying to salvage what remained of the business venture, convincing people to stay committed despite the setbacks, when Mr. Patterson's office sent the official notification. According to Danielle's frantic phone messages, Mom fainted. Literally collapsed in the middle of her presentation when she read that I'd transferred my share to the Historical Society. That the estate could no longer be used commercially. That everything they'd built was over. Kenneth called me that evening. His voice was steady but strained. You destroyed her, he said. You know that, right? You destroyed everything she was trying to build. She destroyed me first, I replied. I just made sure it was permanent. She's your mother, Lily. Doesn't that mean anything? It used to mean everything. But she made her choice at Thanksgiving. I'm just living with the consequences of her decision. He was quiet for a moment. Danielle wants to press charges against you. Claims you stole family property. I donated my legal share of an estate I was entitled to. There's nothing to charge me with. But if she wants to pursue legal action, Mr. Patterson has extensive documentation of her signature fraud. I've been advised that would be an unwise course of action. Kenneth sighed. This family is broken beyond repair. It was broken the moment she chose Danielle over me. I'm just making it official. I hung up and turned off my phone for the rest of the night. The final confrontation came 2 days later. I'd just gotten home from work when I found Mom sitting on the steps outside my apartment building. She looked smaller than ever, wrapped in a coat too big for her, her face hollow and pale. I have nowhere else to go, she said when she saw me. Kenneth left. He said he couldn't be part of this mess anymore. He took Danielle and moved out. Our house is being foreclosed because we used it as collateral for the estate loans. I have nothing, Lily. You took everything. I sat down beside her on the cold concrete steps. Do you remember Thanksgiving? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. You stood at that table in front of everyone we knew, and told me I wasn't part of this family anymore. You didn't take me aside privately. You didn't try to resolve whatever issues we had. You humiliated me publicly and erased me from your life. I know I did. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't rebuild what you destroyed, Mom. Sorry doesn't give me back the years of feeling invisible. Sorry doesn't erase the fact that you chose someone else's daughter over your own. She grabbed my hand. Please. I'll do anything. I'll make it right. Just help me. I'm your mother. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. The woman who'd raised me was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize and wasn't sure I'd ever really known. You were my mother, I said softly. Past tense. You gave up that title when you decided I didn't matter. And I'm done trying to earn back something you should have given freely. I stood up, leaving her sitting on those steps. Lily, wait, she called after me. Please. Don't leave me like this. I paused at the door to my building. You taught me how to walk away, Mom. I'm just following your example. I went inside and locked the door behind me. Through the glass I could see her sitting there, crying. Part of me wanted to go back. But the stronger part, the part that had survived her rejection, kept walking toward the elevator. The formal transfer ceremony took place 3 weeks later. The County Historical Society held a small reception at the estate, celebrating its new status as a protected historic site. Local officials gave speeches about preservation and community heritage. Reporters took photos of the beautiful property that would now be accessible to everyone. I stood in the back, watching as the director unveiled a plaque that would be mounted near the entrance. The Harding family estate, preserved through the generosity of Lillian Harding, in memory of her father and grandfather. My name, right there in bronze, permanently attached to this place. More permanent than any business venture. More lasting than any family drama. After the ceremony, I walked through the house one last time. The Historical Society had already started removing the bed and breakfast renovations, returning rooms to something closer to their original condition. In the study where Grandpa used to work, they'd set up a small exhibit about the family history. There were photos of Dad as a child, of Grandpa building the house, of family gatherings and summer celebrations. The story of the Hardings, preserved properly, told truthfully. My phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Miss Harding. An unfamiliar woman's voice. This is Dr. Bailey from County General Hospital. Your mother was brought in this morning. She listed you as her emergency contact. I'm calling to inform you that she's stable but asking to see you. My heart clenched. What happened? She took an overdose of sleeping pills. We pumped her stomach. She'll recover physically, but she's requesting family support for the psychiatric evaluation. I closed my eyes, standing in my grandfather's study, surrounded by the ghosts of family past. Tell her I'll come. Thank you. Visiting hours are. But tell her something else first, I interrupted. Tell her that I'm coming because it's the right thing to do. Not because we're family. She gave up that connection. This is just human decency. Nothing more. I hung up and looked at the photos on the wall one more time. I went to the hospital that evening. Mom was in a room on the 4th floor, hooked up to monitors, her wrists bandaged from the 4. She looked impossibly old lying there, fragile in a way I'd never seen before. You came, she whispered when she saw me in the doorway. I came, I agreed, but I didn't move closer to the bed. I'm sorry. For everything. I know it doesn't matter now, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. I stood there, hands in my pockets, keeping distance between us. What do you want from me, Mom? Forgiveness. Reconciliation. Money. I just want you to understand that I loved you. I still love you. I just got lost somewhere along the way. You made choices, I said. Active choices to push me away. To replace me. To tell me I didn't matter. Those weren't accidents. They were decisions. I know. We sat in silence for a long moment. Finally I spoke. The Historical Society is going to do good work with the estate. Grandpa would have approved. Dad too. I know, she said again, quieter this time. You'll recover from this. You'll rebuild your life. But it won't include me. Not the way it used to. That bridge burned at Thanksgiving, and neither of us can rebuild it. She started crying again, silent tears running down her hollow cheeks. I understand. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. I hope you find peace, Mom. Really do. But you'll have to find it without me. I walked out of that hospital room and didn't look back. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of a small house I'd bought near the lake, 20 miles from everything I used to know. The down payment came from a modest settlement the Historical Society provided in thanks for the estate donation. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I transferred to a new medical clinic, started over with new co-workers who didn't know my history. Some evenings I drove out to the estate and walked the grounds. The Historical Society had opened it to the public on weekends, and families came to picnic and tour the restored rooms. Children played under the same trees where I'd played as a child. Couples took photos on the porch where Grandpa used to tell stories. The estate was alive again, serving its purpose, preserved the way it should have been all along. I heard through distant relatives that Mom had moved to another state, started working as a piano teacher again. Danielle had gotten a job in marketing somewhere out west. Kenneth had remarried. They'd all moved on, building new lives without me in them. Just as I was building mine without them. Mr. Patterson sent me one final letter, officially closing my case. Everything was settled. The estate was protected. The fraud charges were never filed in exchange for Mom and Danielle's quiet departure, and my name was cleared of any involvement in their schemes. I hung the letter on my refrigerator next to a photo of Dad. Then I made myself dinner in my small, peaceful kitchen, and thought about what comes next. Grandpa used to say that family wasn't just about blood. It was about loyalty, respect, honor. He'd built the estate on those principles, raised his children with those values. Mom forgot those lessons somewhere along the way. She chose convenience over character, new connections over old loyalties. She told me I wasn't part of the family, and she'd been right in a way she didn't understand. I wasn't part of her family anymore. The family that valued appearances over truth, convenience over commitment. But I was still part of Grandpa's family, Dad's family. The family that believed names mattered, that promises meant something, that signing your name to something important was an act of honor. She'd said I was no longer part of this family. She was right. I'd outgrown it. And in doing so, I'd found something better. Myself, standing alone but standing strong, with my name exactly where it belonged. Not erased, not forgotten, not hidden in fine print, but displayed proudly on a bronze plaque, telling the world exactly who I was and what I'd protected. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't destruction. It's preservation. It's honoring what matters most even when others have forgotten. It's signing your name where it always should have been, and refusing to let anyone erase you again. I was Lillian Harding. And I would never forget that again.